Let's talk about the state of the ceasefire talks. Just over a week before Israel resumed its bombardment of Gaza on this massive scale, you had Trump's hostage envoy, Adam Buller, who had met directly with Hamas officials and reported serious progress. This is some of what he told CNN.
Could see something like a long-term truce where we forgive prisoners, where Hamas lays down their arms, where they agree they're not part of the political party going forward. I think that's a reality. It's real close.
So he talked about the possibility of not only a full hostage release, but a long-term truce. And that was based on his conversations with Hamas. He also said in the same interview that the Hamas officials he met with are nice guys. And he pointed out that despite Israeli anger over his talks with Hamas, that the U.S. is not an agent of Israel. And what happened? Well, Israel and the Israel lobby voiced their outrage, and within a few days, Trump had fired Adam Buller as his hostage envoy. And then we had Netanyahu resume the full-scale bombardment, carpet bombing of Gaza. Now, Bassem Naim, who is a top Hamas official, recently gave an interview to CNN, and I want to play some of his comments on the state of these talks, echoing what Adam Buller said about how close they were to an agreement.
A few days before the last brutal aggression against our people in the Gaza Strip, a new American proposal from Mr. Witkoff through the mediators talking about a bridging proposal to release some prisoners in exchange for returning back to the conditions of the first phase, which means temporary ceasefire, opening the borders, allowing the humanitarian aid to get in, and the second, to engage in the negotiations of the second phase. We were up to the last hour before the aggression, we were engaged in these negotiations, and we were near to make a breakthrough in that case. Unfortunately, Netanyahu, for his internal political calculations to get the right radical groups behind him, supporting him in the budget affair, he decided to go the other way to launch a war against Gazans. Now, during the last 2 days, despite of this brutal aggression, the contacts with the mediators and through them with the Americans continue to.
So what do you make of what happened here, Diana, behind the scenes? You had Trump's hostage envoy reporting key progress, confident not only in an immediate hostage deal, but a long-term truce. Then Steve Witkoff, Trump's envoy, came out and gave an interview where he said that Hamas was making unacceptable demands, which he wouldn't specify what they were. Then Israel launches these massive bombardments. Now you have a Hamas official saying that they were very, very close to a deal, and he's actually still hopeful that one could still possibly be reached. So what do you think happened behind the scenes here in Netanyahu's decision to blow up the ceasefire deal?
I think a few things happen. So first, I think that when the first ceasefire was signed, it was signed as a kind of a pause so that Trump could take office and that there could be some sort of calm. And then I think what happened was Netanyahu then flew to the United States. When he flew to the United States, I think that he then started making demands and telling President Trump that they need to have all of the Israeli captives all at once. And that's why you started to see that Trump started repeating the same refrain, all of them, not one, not two, not three, but all of them, all at the same time. And so Netanyahu wanted to renegotiate that three-phase agreement and turn it into just a one-phase agreement, meaning that just release the Israelis and that's the end of it. And so when the Israelis learned that there were these negotiations that were happening directly between the Israelis, between Hamas and between the United States, I think it got them very upset. Plus, add to that you have, in a couple of weeks' time, the Israeli budget needs to be passed. Every Israeli cabinet, the only way they ever collapse inside the country is if the budget doesn't get passed. And given that Itamar Ben-Gvir had already pulled out of the coalition back in January when the first ceasefire agreement was signed, Netanyahu needed to come up with a way to bring him back into the fray in order to be able to pass that budget, in order to remain in office. It's not at all, I think, coincidental that the day that he was bombing Gaza was the same day that he was scheduled to appear for his corruption trial. So in sum total, what I think happened was that Netanyahu was definitely not happy with the 3-phase ceasefire agreement. And he did everything in his power to try to thwart it. And here you have a US president who really can't really seem to keep it together, who's not really focused on anything, and is willing to go along with whatever it is that Netanyahu wants. So my fear now is that this is going to be the new reality, that Netanyahu's been given a green light to continue to forge ahead, to continue to bomb Gaza. There are no breaks. There's nobody who's pushing Israel to stop. Internationally, I'm talking diplomatically. And so he's going to continue. He's going to continue on ahead with implementing what he wants to do. And the amazing thing is that Netanyahu has transformed his own plan into now being one that's called the Trump plan. And that's the ethnic cleansing of Gaza and genocide. I think this was all very calculated and unfortunately not at all surprising.
We've interviewed Francesca Albanese, we've interviewed you, we've interviewed Craig McIver. All of you are human rights lawyers. Does international humanitarian law, do human rights laws, do international laws at all exist anymore? I mean, are they dead? Is this a new era, or is it just more apparent than it has been in the past?
I think it remains to be seen. I refuse to buy into a system that says that Israel can do whatever it wants. And at the same time, I see that this international system has failed Palestinians. But then I look back and I think, well, it also failed other peoples around the world as well. It failed South Africa for quite some time. It failed Algeria. It failed all of these people who had been struggling for their rights. Eventually, it does catch up. The problem is that it's how long before it eventually catches up, and the real issue here is that you can look at this world and say might equals right, because that's the way that it's been played out, or you can say actually these are some tools that we have that will give us leverage. It might not be immediate, but at least it gives us a little bit of a longer term leverage. I just really wish that, especially all of those European countries who have spent so many years living in Palestine, who've preached to me about the necessity for human rights, the necessity for women's rights, the necessity for children's rights, and the necessity for all of these, this global system. I kind of want to hold up a mirror to them and say, and now what? Now what are you doing about it?
I read about a debate that you had where someone basically asked you to condemn Hamas for being anti-woman, anti-gay, and your response was like, "Are you going to condemn Israel?"
And this is the problem, is that it always gets into this like logic that somehow it's a question of the oppressed condemning.
Right.
It was like we're expected to be perfect in resisting this onslaught, in resisting genocide, in resisting our ethnic cleansing. And if you're not perfect, then somehow you're not worthy of anything. You're not worthy of right. You're not worthy of being alive. This is the perverse system that has been created, that Israel can do no wrong, and Palestinians can do no right. And we have to be the ultimate, we have to be ultra perfect in order for people to look and say, yes, they do have a right to live. Yes, they do have a right to live freely. And when you go down that path, it's frightening.
Yeah.
It's frightening. It's frightening. It's dehumanizing.
Yeah. Conditional humanity.
Yeah.